In the quiet suburbs of Maidenhead, England, in the spring of 1988, an elderly man named Nicholas Winton was doing what many people his age do, clearing out his attic. It was a dusty, forgotten place, filled with the relics of a long life, old photographs, yellowed letters, books no one had opened in decades, the kind of space where memories go to sleep. But on this particular day, his wife Greta found something that would stop her heart. Tucked away in a battered leather briefcase hidden beneath layers of other papers was a scrapbook. Not the kind filled with holiday snapshots or family gatherings. This scrapbook was different. Inside were lists, hundreds of names written in careful handwriting, photographs of small, scared faces, children with wide eyes and uncertain smiles, and travel documents, permits, letters, all of them stamped with destinations to London. Greta stood there, holding the scrapbook in her hands, her heart pounding. She looked at her husband, this quiet, unassuming man she had been married to for decades, and asked, "Nicky, what is this?" Nicholas Winton looked at the scrapbook. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then quietly, almost reluctantly, he began to tell her a story he had kept locked away for 50 years. Not his wife, not his children, not his closest friends. No one had known. He had hidden a secret that involved the lives of 669 people. This is the story of a man who didn't carry a gun, who never wore a uniform, but who staged one of the greatest rescues in human history. A man the world would eventually call the British Schindler. The year was 1938. Europe was a tinderbox. The shadow of the swastika was spreading like a disease across the continent. Adolf Hitler had annexed Austria in March. The Munich Agreement had just handed him the Sudetenland. The world watched, paralyzed, as democracy crumbled and darkness descended. While most of London was preparing for Christmas, wrapping presents, singing carols, enjoying the warmth of their homes, 29-year-old Nicholas Winton was preparing for a skiing trip to Switzerland. He was a stockbroker, a young man with his whole life ahead of him, comfortable, safe, far from the chaos brewing across the channel. But then a phone call changed everything. His friend Martin Blake called him from Prague. His voice was urgent, strained. "Nicky," he said, "don't bring your skis. Forget Switzerland. I have something far more important, far more interesting for you. I need your help here. You need to see this." Winton could have said no. He could have gone skiing. He could have enjoyed his holiday and returned to his comfortable life in London. But something in Blake's voice told him this was different. This mattered. So instead of the Swiss Alps, Nicholas Winton boarded a train to Prague. When he arrived in Czechoslovakia in December 1938, he didn't find a holiday destination. He found hell on earth. Makeshift refugee camps scattered across the city and surrounding areas. Thousands of refugees, mostly Jewish families, living in freezing, squalid conditions. They had fled from Germany, from Austria, from regions already consumed by Nazi terror. And now they were trapped, terrified of what was coming next. Most people who visited these camps looked at the situation and felt pity. Some felt despair. Some turned away because it was too overwhelming, too painful to witness. But Nicholas Winton looked at it and felt something different. He felt a duty, a responsibility, and most importantly, he felt that something could be done. Winton walked through the camps with Blake and another aid worker, Doreen Warner. What he saw haunted him. Families huddled together in tents and temporary shelters, their breath visible in the freezing air. Children with hollow eyes wearing threadbare coats. Parents who had lost everything. Their homes, their livelihoods, their sense of safety, clinging to the only thing they had left, their children. And Winton realized a terrible truth. The adults were trapped. The borders were closing. No country wanted to take in thousands of refugees. Political will was absent. Bureaucracy was strangling any attempts at rescue. The adults, tragically, had very few options. But maybe, just maybe, the children could be saved. Britain had recently established the Kinder Transport Program, a scheme that allowed Jewish children from Nazi-controlled territories to enter Britain temporarily, provided they had sponsors and foster families waiting for them. It was a narrow window, hedged with restrictions and red tape, but it was a window nonetheless. Nicholas Winton made a decision that would define the rest of his life. He would get as many children out as possible. He set up an office, if you could call it that, at a dining table in his hotel room. Just him, a typewriter, some paper, and an overwhelming sense of urgency. Word spread like wildfire through the refugee community. Within days, parents began lining up outside his hotel, desperate, terrified, clutching photographs of their children, begging him to put their names on his list. Imagine being a parent in that moment. Your world is collapsing. You know what's coming. The rumors of violence, of deportations, of camps are already circulating. And here is this young Englishman, a complete stranger, offering you a chance. Not for yourself, you're too late, but for your child, a chance at life. Parents made impossible choices. They filled out forms with trembling hands. They gave Winton photographs of their children, sometimes the only photographs they had. They signed papers that gave their children away, knowing they might never see them again. But there was a problem, a massive, seemingly insurmountable problem. No country wanted these children, at least not without conditions that seemed almost impossible to meet. The British government said they would only accept the children if Winton could find a foster family for every single one of them. Not group homes, not orphanages, individual families willing to take in a foreign child, often one who didn't speak English, who had been traumatized, who came from a completely different culture. And there was more. For each child, Winton had to provide a £50 guarantee, a bond to ensure the child wouldn't become a financial burden on the state. £50 in 1939 was an enormous sum, equivalent to thousands of pounds today. Multiply that by hundreds of children, and you're looking at a fortune. Most people would have looked at these requirements and given up. The task was impossible. The odds were impossible. The time was running out. Nicholas Winton didn't give up. He returned to London and began working around the clock. By day, he worked his regular job at the stock exchange, maintaining his normal life, keeping up appearances. But by night, he became a different person. He transformed into a one-man rescue operation, fighting bureaucracy, cutting through red tape, doing whatever it took. He placed advertisements in newspapers and church bulletins across Britain, appealing for foster families. Can you open your home to a child in desperate need? He wrote letters, hundreds of letters, to government officials, to potential donors, to anyone who might help. He forged documents when he had to. He bent rules. He found creative ways around regulations that were designed, intentionally or not, to keep these children out. He raised money however he could, donations, fundraising events, personal appeals, and perhaps most remarkably, he did all of this with almost no official support, no government backing, no large organization behind him. Just Nicholas Winton, a small team of dedicated volunteers, and a relentless determination that refused to accept impossible as an answer. Time was running out. Every day brought fresh news of Nazi aggression. Every day the window grew smaller. And then, against all odds, the first train left Prague. March 14th, 1939. The train pulled out of Wilson Station in Prague, carrying precious cargo, children, some as young as 2 years old, some teenagers, each one clutching a small suitcase, wearing a numbered tag around their neck. each one leaving behind everything they knew. The scenes at the train station were heartbreaking beyond words. Parents trying to be brave for their children, telling them they would see each other soon, even though many knew, deep down, that this was goodbye forever. Mothers pressing photographs and family treasures into their children's hands. Fathers lifting their sons and daughters through the train windows, their faces etched with grief and hope in equal measure. The children pressed their faces against the windows as the train pulled away, watching their parents disappear into the distance. Some cried, some were too young to understand. Some tried to be brave. Nicholas Winton stood on the platform watching, making sure every child was accounted for, making sure the train left on time. And then he would return to his office and begin preparing for the next one. 8 trains successfully left Prague between March and August 1939. 8 times Winton orchestrated the impossible. 8 times he watched as families were torn apart so that children could live. The logistics were staggering. Each train had to be organized down to the smallest detail. Travel permits had to be obtained for each child. No easy feat given the increasingly hostile Nazi bureaucracy. Train schedules had to be coordinated. Foster families in Britain had to be matched with specific children. Funds had to be raised to pay for tickets, for the guarantees, for all the hidden costs. And every train was a race against time, because everyone knew Hitler was coming. The Nazi occupation of the rest of Czechoslovakia was imminent. The invasion of Poland was being planned. War was inevitable. The children who made it onto those trains arrived in Britain to a new world. Many didn't speak English. Many had never been away from their parents before. They were placed with foster families, some wonderful, some less so, and had to adapt to a completely foreign culture while processing the trauma of what they left behind. But they were alive. They had a future, because one man decided their lives were worth fighting for. The final largest group was scheduled to leave on September 1st, 1939. 250 children. It was to be the biggest transport yet. Winton had worked for months to arrange it. Every child had a foster family waiting. Every document was in order. Everything was ready. The children arrived at Wilson Station with their parents. The same heartbreaking scenes played out once more. The goodbyes, the promises, the tears, the brave faces. The children boarded the train. They took their seats. They looked out the windows at their parents. The doors were closing. The train was ready to depart. And then the news broke. Germany had invaded Poland. September 1st, 1939. The borders were sealed immediately. The war had begun. That 9th train never left the station. The children were ordered off. They returned to their parents. A reunion that should have been joyful, but was instead filled with terror. Because everyone knew what it meant. The window had closed. The escape route was gone. Of those 250 children who were supposed to be on that train, almost none survived the war. They perished in concentration camps, in ghettos, in the machinery of the Holocaust that consumed 6 million Jewish lives. This was the burden Nicholas Winton carried for 50 years. He didn't think he was a hero. He couldn't think of himself that way, because every time he remembered the 669 children he saved, he also remembered the 250 he couldn't save, the ones who were so close, who had their tickets, who were on the train. He haunted himself with that memory, with the thought that maybe if he had worked faster, if he had been more creative, if he had pushed harder, he could have gotten one more train out, maybe just one more. So he put the scrapbook in a briefcase, he put the briefcase in the attic, and he tried to move on with his life. Fast forward to 1988. Nearly 50 years later, Greta Winton had discovered the scrapbook. She had heard the story, and she knew immediately that the world needed to know about her husband. She contacted the BBC, and they arranged for Nicholas to appear on a popular television program called That's Life, hosted by Esther Rantzen. Nicholas agreed, though he was reluctant. He thought perhaps they would just show the scrapbook, talk a bit about history, and that would be that. He sat in the audience, a quiet elderly man, thinking he was there just to watch, to be a small part of the program. But Esther Rantzen had other plans. She began talking about the Kinder transport, about Nicholas Winton's rescue operation. She showed the scrapbook on camera, described what he had done. Nicholas sat in his seat, uncomfortable with the attention. And then Rantzen asked a question that would create one of the most powerful moments in television history. Is there anyone in our audience tonight who owes their life to Nicholas Winton? For a moment, there was silence. Nicholas looked confused, and then slowly the woman sitting next to him stood up. Then the man behind him, then another person, and another. One by one, people all around him rose to their feet, dozens of them. And then the entire audience was standing, looking at this one elderly man with tears in their eyes. They were the children from the trains, now in their 50s and 60s. Doctors, lawyers, teachers, grandparents. They had built lives, raised families, contributed to the world. They were alive because of a man who never wanted a thank you, a man who had never told anyone what he'd done. Nicholas Winton sat there, surrounded by the people he had saved, overwhelmed, tears streaming down his face. The camera captured him looking around in disbelief, his hands shaking, unable to speak. These weren't just 669 people he had saved. Each of those children had gone on to have children of their own, and grandchildren. Today, it's estimated that more than 6,000 people are walking this earth because of what Nicholas Winton did in 1938 and 1939. 6,000 lives, 6,000 futures, all because one man decided that if something is not impossible, there must be a way. After that television appearance, Nicholas Winton became a public figure. He was knighted by Queen Elizabeth II in 2003. He received honors from the Czech Republic, from Israel, from governments and organizations around the world. Statues were erected, schools were named after him. He became a symbol of moral courage. But if you asked Nicholas Winton about it, he would tell you he was just an ordinary person who did what needed to be done. He would deflect praise. He would talk about the other people who helped, the volunteers, the foster families, the donors. He never wanted to be seen as special. And perhaps that's the most important lesson of his story. Nicholas Winton wasn't superhuman. He didn't have special powers or unlimited resources. He was a stockbroker who saw suffering and decided he couldn't look away. He was someone who, when faced with an impossible situation, refused to accept impossibility. He showed us that heroism doesn't always look like a soldier on a battlefield. Sometimes it looks like a man at a dining table, typing lists. Sometimes it looks like placing an advertisement in a newspaper. Sometimes it looks like refusing to give up when everyone tells you the task is too big, the odds too long, the time too short. Nicholas Winton passed away on July 1st, 2015, at the age of 106. He lived long enough to see his story told, to meet the people he saved, to understand the true magnitude of what he had done. But his legacy didn't die with him. It lives on in those 6,000 descendants. It lives on in the countless people inspired by his story to take action in their own lives, in their own ways, against injustice and suffering. It lives on in the reminder that one person can make a difference, that you don't need permission to do good, that when systems fail, when governments drag their feet, when the world seems paralyzed, individuals can still act. Nicholas Winton's story asks us a question: what would we do? If we saw suffering, if we saw injustice, if we saw people who needed help, would we look away? Would we say it's not our problem? Would we say it's too hard, too complicated, someone else will handle it? Or would we, like Nicholas Winton, decide that if something is not impossible, there must be a way? The scrapbook from that attic is now preserved in a museum. The photographs of those 669 children are testimonies to the power of one person's determination. Each name on those lists represents not just one life, but a family tree that continues to grow, branches reaching into the future. If you found this story inspiring, honor the heroes. Remember their names, tell their stories, and when you face your own moment, your own chance to make a difference, remember the stockbroker who saved 669 children with nothing but a typewriter, a hotel room, and a refusal to accept the impossible. Because a hero is not always a soldier on a battlefield. Sometimes a hero is a man with a scrapbook and a heart that refuses to give up. Thank you for listening. If this story moved you, please share it, subscribe, and remember, we all have the power to be someone's Nicholas Winton.